I know that I am not the only one saying this, but I really want folks to understand. I know I've made a number of videos today emphasizing how the protest events around the country yesterday were completely nonviolent, and how the cops were like either non-existent, or the very few who showed up were like, damn, y'all are chill and we're not even really needed here. Thank you so much for directing traffic and keeping things peaceful and orderly. And how we know that this regime, and we know that MAGA hats are going to want to try and use 5 million people turning out in the streets around the country in peaceful demonstration on behalf of democracy, on behalf of our communities, on behalf of our rights, and as an excuse to say that they're going to try and institute martial law or the Insurrection Act or whatever other authoritarian clampdown they inevitably are going to try, which is not going to work in a country as, geographically expansive and diverse as America, and with our huge population base. Right. And I've really appreciated the perspective of military experts who have said you cannot possibly maintain martial law in a country of 340 million people when you only have 2 million people in your military. But it doesn't mean that they won't try, right? Because that's what authoritarians do. They want to continue to strip us of our constitutional rights. And they are really, really scared of us protesting. They do not want anyone to see that they do not have the power, right? We know that Trump doesn't actually have a mandate. It's just that people were not aware of how large the resistance was until we all start getting out in the streets and we can all see each other. Oh, it's not just me. It's millions. It's people in every community, right? I've said this over and over. It's people in every community who turned out in peaceful protest. And at those protests, we didn't see vandalism. We didn't see cops being beaten. We didn't see altercations between cops and protesters. I think there was one event where someone was arrested, and that's because he was threatening peaceful protesters with a firearm. He was a MAGA chud threatening peaceful protesters with a firearm. But overall, these protests were very, very, very peaceful. And full of children, people felt really comfortable bringing their families. There was a lot of anger about what the Trump regime is doing, but there's also this tremendous sense of solidarity and this rising hope, right? People had really goodwill toward each other. And it was just a really important time for people not only to connect with each other, but to draw courage from each other. And I've seen a number of folks in the Black community talk about this, how, a significant portion of them stayed home, and that was an intentional act. It's not because they're not supporting democracy. And I've seen so many folks saying, we're praying for the people who are out in the streets. We are supporting you from home. We are doing other things like massive economic boycotts. Our resistance may look different, but there is a reason that we're not showing up to this event. And to be clear, no group is a monolith, right? So I saw lots of folks of lots of different backgrounds at the events in Portland, and from photos and videos of other protests around the country as well. And I don't want anybody feeling like they have a right to criticize the Black community or members of that community for choosing to not show up. And I think the fact that the protests were so peaceful yesterday is exactly proving the point of the Black folks who wanted to stay home. I saw a woman who was very tearful saying, we stayed home in order to keep those protests peaceful. And if you don't understand what she means, as I was marching and looking at all these white grannies, I was like, how bad would it look for the cops if they started shit with somebody's grandma, some little old white lady and her walker, or some young blonde soccer mom with some cherubic toe-headed toddler on her hip? The optics of that would be devastating for the cops and for this regime. And you don't think the cops are aware of that, the impetus for them to dial it back. Well, first of all, to not see little old white ladies or young white women, or even some middle-aged white woman like me, they don't see us as a threat. And they presume that whatever we're going to do is more likely to be within the confines of the law. And we already know statistically that the perception of law enforcement when it comes to Black men, especially, but any Black person, is that they are going to assume negative intent more often than not. They do not extend the presumption of innocence to a Black person the same way they do to a white person. They do not assign innocent or lawful intent the same way, depending on your skin tone. And so this woman who's very tearful was like, if the Black people had turned up in the same force as the white folks, those protests would have not been as peaceful. And it has nothing to do with the behavior of the protesters and everything to do with the way that cops respond to the skin color of people who protest. I think that is absolutely, absolutely true. And I wish more people, I get a fair number of comments on my YouTube, I've got them on TikTok too, from white people who are frustrated that more Black folks weren't showing up or were telling people that they were going to stay home. And I wish we could just view everybody's actions through a lens of solidarity. And I appreciated so much that that creator was like, Black people are staying home not only to keep themselves safe, but to keep their communities safe from police violence, to make sure that these initial protests go off as seamlessly as possible to help the resistance build. And if you don't understand that that is the very real dynamic that exists, I can comfortably march in the streets. I can get up in the face of a cop and feel pretty secure that like bad things are not going to happen to me. Yesterday, I had cops thanking me for helping direct traffic as a safety marshal. They call me things like ma'am. Please understand that no matter how peaceful protesters are, there is always an element of risk because the state is always going to find excuses to be violent toward us. And you would be very foolish to think that skin color is not an excuse that they will use, because they know the media perceives their aggression toward peaceful protesters who are not pasty white like me very differently than they view aggression toward middle-aged, lily white, homeschool mom. So first of all, it was the job of us white folks to show that we are willing to turn out in force. And I've been really pleased to see a lot of Black creators today say like, okay, you put your money where your mouth is. Thank you, white America, for showing that you are willing to do the thing. Like white America, whatever little amount of trust we ever earned with the Black community, we lost it in this last election. And we need to take the actions to demonstrate that we are safe people to ally with. And this was the first step in that. And so I think, Black folks had every right to stay home. And it's none of our business what their reason was for doing that. But I just really, really appreciated the folks who were like, I'm thinking about my community and I'm thinking about the realities of racism in the US. And I'm choosing to stay home, not because I don't care about democracy and not because I don't care about my neighbors who might be white, but I'm staying home because I love them so much, because I love this country so much. And I want those protests to go well. And I know that if I show up, the cops are going to use that as an excuse to misbehave. So I'm saying this because I'm not sure that a lot of white folks understand that that is the reality. And it's something that we really, really need to be aware of, because the resistance movement is only growing and there will be more and more events. And I think that we need to make them safe and inviting spaces for folks who are not white, who want to show up when and if they feel ready. But then we need to have kind of extra safety measures in place. We need to be planning with the understanding of the way that the state, the way that law enforcement behaves very differently around folks who don't look like us, and what that means for our planning and preparation, right? If we want to be inclusive, if we want to show that we are a solidarity movement, a pro-democracy movement that values community and diversity, and that considers the needs of the most vulnerable amongst us, we need to plan accordingly. Anyway, that's my 2 cents on that. If you have other thoughts, I would love to hear it.